Hello, and thank you for joining us on iBridged Leadership Stories. I'm super happy to introduce our next guest, Joe Mindak, the CEO and founder of Nolodex. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Joe has a multiple decade experience in various industries. He is the true definition of an entrepreneur. You'll see that come through as we talk. He'll talk more about Nolodex, the purpose that it serves, but we're going to dive deeper into some leadership aspects around trust and accountability and execution. So looking forward to that segment as well. Previous to Nolodex, Joe launched a magazine, a local magazine in the New Jersey area, a beer company, a wedding site, and a music festival, to name a few of the things that he's dabbled in and has successfully executed against. Joe's also put out, he's put out his second album now, which has a bit of a country flavor, but crosses some genre, including maybe some rock and some pop together. If we get a chance, we'll talk about that as well. In addition to all of that, Joe's other big passion is a foundation that he founded and is now the executive director for, which focuses on providing homes for veterans, for homeless veterans. So we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit more as well and get into some of those details. Please join me in welcoming Joe Mindak to the stage. Joe, very nice to see you.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for that nice introduction. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. So, Joe, you're the founder and CEO of Nolodex, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that before we jump into the leadership stuff.
Yeah, so this is my seventh company, right? And I started it originally with a community that I started in networking, right? And I thought networking could be done differently. So I started a community after I sold my marketing agency, and said, "Hey, why don't we pay each other for referrals? What are we doing here?"
Yeah,
Right, Jeff, you know people. You have 100 people you know.
yeah,
How
yeah.
about you connect me to them and I'll pay you for it, right? Because I was always networking. I was always in groups. My marketing agency was always in different networking groups and giving referrals and waiting for that back. And I said, there's a better way to do this. Why are we not? Everyone pays referral fees, right? Businesses are like, yeah, I'll pay a referral fee. You get me into your cousin, your college roommate that could get me in the door of this company. I'm willing to pay that fee to get it, because how else am I getting to that top of the funnel type of thing? So we started just, paying each other. There's a handful of people that I brought together and said, let's all pay each other, figure out this formula. And that's how Nolodex was born, which is a software platform that tracks that all, right? So not only
Mhm.
can communities, networking groups, chambers, alumni associations, everyone can use this platform and say, hey, we're all part of a community. Now let's come together, open doors for each other for business. That's what they're all in here for, networking. And everyone pays a fee. So if you give a referral, if you're a great networker like myself, I'm a good networker. I love networking. I'm getting paid for referring people, and people that aren't good at networking, that aren't great at sales, that don't like to talk, obviously, like I already could tell I already do, are getting business and willing to pay. Yes, bring me business. I don't like talk. I don't like
Mhm.
getting out there selling and doing. I like doing what I like to do, building websites, designing stuff, whatever it is, accounting. I'm not really good at sales, but if you could open the door for me, I'm willing to pay a fee to get business.
Mhm.
So it works for both ends, and the clients that need those resources are happy because you're referring them to somebody you've worked with before, right? So it
Mhm.
all comes together all on one platform, and we haven't seen anyone else who built a platform that can handle everything under one roof. It's like a CRM system where referrals are tracked. You could follow up. You could do all that you have to do, and then everything gets paid in the system, and all the money runs right through Stripe, and all taken care of. So the money splits, and you can decide how to split it. It gets all done through Stripe automatically.
Mhm. I love the concept. So you're sort of formalizing professional networking, and you're building in a monetization component to it where that's also formalized, but then also operationalized. That's a really, really interesting space. I know, as a business owner, I've certainly attended my share of networking events, and a variety of experiences and outcomes. One of the things that I found in attending some of the networking sessions is they're really great. You meet, really, really high quality people, and it's friendly. And then it's like, well, that, kind of nice to meet you, nice to know you. and then it doesn't go much further beyond that. But it sounds like your networking forum, again, sort of formalizes all of that and focuses on deal making, which is ultimately the goal. What kind of successes are you having in this? First of all, what is that organization called?
So the beta group that we started is called the Connective.
Okay.
That's the community that we started, right? And it's connecting people. So, you know, we have 425 members now
Wow.
and growing, right? We started with 7 people in a diner that I knew, like Jeff, me, you,
Wow.
Emily, Chris, whatever. Like, what do you guys think? Like, this sounds good. And it's just, I think just by the growth we've had and being able to grow a community to that size, a lot of networking groups, people have tried to do networking before. I could do it a better way. You know, be
Yeah.
nice, hey, but I'm going to do better. And it just, and I've seen people try to do it. It just never really works because it's just doing the same old thing. Oh, I could run the meetings better. No, we're paying you. So that's the difference, right? So the people, like I said, that want to give referrals get paid. So it really changes the way networking is done. That's what we're really looking to do with Nolodex is say, hey, it's time to start getting paid for your referrals, or it's time to start
Mhm.
paying people to open doors for you, right?
Mhm.
And we have 3,000 deals amongst those 400 people, right?
Wow. Wow.
3,000 deals on the table, right? So does it work? Yeah. And we have completed deals, and I just got off the phone with a member that just closed a $400,000 deal,
That's
$400,000
incredible.
deal on Friday, right? So
That's
that to the person that gave that referral, think about that. Let's say they pay 10% commission, that's $40,000. That member just made $20,000.
nice.
Now that
Nice.
changes networking, right? You're gonna open some more doors? Yeah, hell yeah. Like, right?
Mhm.
You know, and let's stop, you know, beating around the bush with this stuff. Let's start paying each other. Like it's all human capital. We've been around for 25, 30 years, you and I, and you know, we're maybe a little older than some of the other people, but
Right.
like
Right.
building this network for 30 years. I have people that I can call on my phone right now and say, yeah, Jeff, you want a meeting with that person? Yeah, I
Yeah.
can get a meeting, right? And not push those meetings. Hey, Jeff, I could get you with that other CEO, but what is it you want to tell them? Well, this is
Mhm.
what we do. This is what we want to talk
Yeah.
about. Let me
Yeah.
ask them. And if they want to talk about it, and that makes the deals so much easier to close because you're meeting with someone I know. Yes, I know them well, and they want to talk to you, Jeff. They want to know what iBridge
Mhm.
does. You gave me a
Mhm.
little snippet of what they do. Yeah, you know what? I like to talk to that guy. And if it works, that deal's going to close. So that $400,000 deal was a member that his client needed that service, and he recommended them, right? And said, "Yeah, use these people." So the client's like, "Okay, I use you. You're great at what you do. I trust that. I trust that you're going to give me somebody good." And they signed a deal with them. And this is the second. They already did one part of the project already, so they've proven that the client's like, "Yes, I like what you do." Now they signed a $400,000 deal to go out and finish the rest of the project.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
I love what you said there. It's like, I see networking, but I can find a way to do it better. And that to me seems like the battle cry for every entrepreneur. They see a need and they're able to then sort of uniquely go fill for it. So love to hear that. And I'll make sure that your organization is listed in our show notes in case anybody is interested in learning more about the Connective. You also mentioned building trust, and that part of your focus around networking is these trust-based relationships. I'd love to talk about that in more depth and detail with you, especially from a leadership perspective. And off air, we were talking a little bit about the magazine that you had published, and you've got a really great story around that. Let's talk about that example of trust.
yeah, so I had businesses. I started a marketing company out of college. I had that business. I had some partners, and you start to figure out who you could trust. And I brought in Kevin, who was our creative director, and he was just phenomenal at what he did. And he was just
Mm,
so we had decided we should start a magazine. We wanted to start a magazine in Hoboken, where our office was. So we decided to launch the magazine. But Kevin was the creative guy. I was the sales guy, and we
mhm,
brought Simon in, who worked for, again, I own the agency. These guys actually work for me at the agency, but Simon was an incredible web developer. So at the time, this was 2009, right?
mhm.
Um, web wasn't where it is today, and so we brought Simon and say, "You do okay. We're going to partner on this. All three of us will be partners on this, but let's trust each other to do the jobs we're supposed to do. Right? I'm not going to
Mhm.
step on your toes, you're not gonna step on my toes. So I was in charge of sales. I was in charge of bringing in the advertising to pay for everything. Kevin was in charge of the creative and all the content that went into that magazine, and then Simon was in charge of the web. So and this was the magazine. I don't know if we're videotaping this thing, but or video,
Yeah.
but the
Oh, that looks
magazine.
great.
Yeah, so this is Mark Lohr, who sold to his company Jet to a Walmart for $3 billion. So his office was in Hoboken. So I was the only cover issue I ever did the interview for. But the cover was the only thing that I got involved with and Simon got involved with, right? And
Mhm.
as far as Kevin's job, right? Because the cover was what was going to be out there. So we all decided what should be on the cover, but the rest of the content and everything that went into each of those issues, I never saw as one of the owners of the magazine until I walked home after the magazine came out, and we had racks all over town, and I would just grab one on my way home, and then that's when I would see what's in that issue.
Mhm.
That's all I
Wow.
would read,
Wow.
just like everybody else. I would find out, I'd open up the magazine and be like, all right, what's going on in here? And that's when I would find out, oh, that's a cool article. That's good. Oh, that's someone we wrote about. Like Kevin was in charge of that. And I
Yeah.
didn't question like what he did or whatever. And then Simon, think about this. Simon was in charge of the website. Now, as a marketing agency, you have a client that says, this is what I want on the website. This is what I want. And they're telling you how to do it. And that was the frustrating part of owning an agency. Like you hired us to do the job, and then you're telling
Right.
us how to do the job. So
Right.
Simon, being an awesome mind, he was a creative and a development mind. Like you don't get those two things in one. We said just build a website. We want a community website. So go build it, Simon. And he built it on his own with no real influence from Kevin or I, because we trusted that he's going to build it. He knows what he's doing. He built that website, Jeff. It was the #1 website on WordPress in the world for
Wow.
4 months in the world,
Super impressive.
and not voted on by anyone but other developers. So
Uh-huh.
so people, WordPress, if you know, is a free platform at the time,
Right.
right? So all these developers would go on and show what they did, and then they would rank it, and the other developers ranked HMag as a top site.
That's
So
phenomenal.
trusting
Congratulations.
that Simon, hey, you know what you're doing, do what you do, not from Joe Mindak, because I don't know what I
Mhm.
don't know what website, right? And then we would get calls from people that saw that, and it just boosted our agencies. The
Mhm.
magazine, really how we built the magazine. We wanted a magazine that was cool, but the point behind it was there was all these people in Hoboken in these condos that lived in Hoboken, all these young professionals in Hoboken, New Jersey, right across from New York City. There's all young professionals that work in New York City. A lot of our clients for our agency lived in Hoboken. So
Hmm.
part of the reason we did the magazine, part of the reason we did it so nice, you don't see magazines that are horizontal like
It's
this with
gorgeous.
see the gloss and the beautiful paper and the articles, and because 15,000 copies went to all those people in those condos,
Huh.
and they would come back to us and say, hey, I saw your magazine, I work for Associated Press, I'd love you guys to do some creative work for us. So next thing you know, we're doing
Nice.
a $40,000 project for Associated Press. So
Nice.
back to the trust, like we all trusted each other. You do your job, I'll do mine, and it's all going to come together to form a successful, not only successful magazine, but something that drove business to our agency.
So, in terms of what iBridge does, trust is one of the behaviors that we help organizations really get to a place. I call it operationalizing it, where trust is functional and it's an important component to not only relationship development but really contributing to the success of any operation. The kind of trust that you described is something that we would call predictive based trust. Your partners came in or your employees came in and you trusted them to do the job that they were assigned to do. And I think that's probably the most common form of trust, and it is always the one that's the most present. It's the easiest one to identify. I think a level above that might be something we call relational trust or relationship based trust. Your trust included a component of doing what you say you're going to do, and then say what you're going to do and then doing it. That's that predictive based trust. But how would you describe the relationship once you got beyond that? Hey, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and you can trust me to get that done. It seems like your level of trust was beyond that because you didn't even look at the magazine and what was being produced until after it was already published.
Right. And that wasn't from day one, right? The first couple
It's
issues we
time.
all got in, but as people were reacting to the magazine. I mean, again, Kevin did all the creative and all the look and feel of it. The
Mhm.
content we helped with it the first couple issues, but after that we got such a great review from it, and everything we did was great. It's like, I don't need to look at this anymore. You know what you're doing, Kevin. Why
Mhm.
am I going to bother with that? I have sales to do. Right? I'm
Right.
going to try and micromanage and be involved with every aspect of the magazine. I'm not going to be out there selling, which is what my job is. So let me just get out
Yeah.
there and sell. And so yeah, so it does go beyond that, and you just got to get to that level, right? But
Mhm.
you got to bring in the right people. I've been screwed plenty of times by either a partner or I had a sales guy and a couple other people that, like, people are tough to trust, but you just cut them off and keep moving on, right? But then you just, my wife always says it, like, you can't stop trusting people. Like, listen, you gotta take a chance and work with somebody to get going, right? And see what happens. And then you start to add a little more trust. Then you start to go more, right? So, like,
Mhm.
Adrian, who's my partner on Nolodex, right? Co-founder, I should have said at the beginning because he'll kill me. But I brought Adrian on originally as an investor, and
Mhm.
start to build that trust. And I flew down to meet him. He's in Atlanta, and I flew down to break bread and talk. And him and actually his
Mhm.
grandfather went out to dinner with us. And I got to know his grandfather, who was a World War II vet and just an awesome guy. And went from here to here to here to full partner, right?
What comes up for me when you describe that flying down to see Adrian and that very much is a trust building step. You also probably want to understand his competency and what he can contribute and what kind of guy he is. What do those signals look like for you? How did you walk away from that session thinking this is someone I can do business with because I can trust him?
Yeah. So, the flying down is a gut thing, right? You're going down
Sure.
to have dinner and go to his house and just kind of get a feel for, is this person, the Unabomber, or it's like,
Right.
where do you live? Like, like that. But also you just you get a feel, and then you got to start working together, and you take it slow.
Mm,
It's like, your first date, and then you start, getting a little more serious, but like you start to see signs and stuff. So I think it's, hey, what are you contributing to the company? So it's like, okay, this person is doing
mhm.
this, then they're doing this, then they're doing that. Like, they really know what they're doing. And then it's like it just kept growing into the fact that, like, hey, look, and that's what we did with the magazine. Like, Simon wasn't a full partner when he started, but he earned
Oh,
that he earned our trust and accountability, and that he was doing a good job to say, you know what, you're doing as much work as we are. You should be a full partner. That's how it went with Adrian as well, where it was like, listen, I can't do this without you. Why we should be partners on this, right?
what
Uh,
I heard you say though, Joe, is you started off with that meeting, and you didn't say this, but what I sort of heard and interpreted is you offer a little bit of trust or enough trust to get moving, and then you give a little more trust and a little more trust. What would you be looking for to increase that allocation of trust or to grant more trust? What sort of things signal to you that it's okay to open that up?
well, I think, obviously, if you have somebody that's not, responsive and not getting stuff done and just kind of like, not doing their job, you're gonna be like, hey, we said you should have this here by Friday. But Adrian, it was like, getting stuff done on top of what I was like, this is what we need to do. It's like, hey, we should do this, we should do that, we should, like,
Mhm.
pushing things and pushing the company. Be like, hey, I just put this together over the weekend. This is what I think we should do. It's like, this guy's just doing so much more, and it's like, hey,
Mm.
I'm not going to grow as quickly as I want to without someone like this. Where I had a partner before Adrian on Nolodex and the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had a partner before that. And after about a year, of working together, we went out to lunch, and I said, "Listen, I'm going on my own, man. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, we keep having a meeting. We leave the meeting with stuff to do, and you never. Then we meet the next week, and none of it's done.
Yeah.
Whereas the opposite with Adrian was like, hey, this is the stuff we have to do after this meeting, and it's like, yeah, got those done, and here's 10 other things I decided to do, and stuff that
Yeah.
decided that we should be doing. And it's like, and it almost became where I started working for him. It's like, hey, here's some things you need to do, Joe. I'm like, oh, all right, give me a list. And it just, you start to really feel as a partnership where, you're real. And again, I'm still kind of in charge of the sales and that side of things, and he's really in charge of operations type of thing, and that
Mhm.
really works well, right? We're yin and yang on a lot of things, which is great
That
because
is great, or it can be.
I think this, if I think this, and it's like, and a lot of times I'll say I think this. Like we were literally just on a email before this, kind of arguing about a new member, and I was like this. He's like no, and I'm like, well, but you didn't think about this. He's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Okay, let's do
Yeah.
that. Like, and it's just like. And I do the same thing where I'll say, hey, I think this. He's like, no. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I didn't think about that. And, and sometimes it's, one person's right or not. But when he's right, yeah, you know what? You are right. And you got to just be like, you know what? That's a good point and think about that. So
That's a really interesting perspective. There's an old saying. I'm smiling because sometimes people hear this saying, and the saying is, if two of us are in a room and we both agree, one of us isn't needed. And I love that statement
right.
because it's such a, when you think of it from a healthy perspective, it's such a healthy introduction and acceptance of conflict.
Yeah.
Conflict says, hey, we don't have to agree. And in fact, we're probably going to get to a better answer and a better outcome, or more importantly, a better decision if we're going to come at each other just in the way that you've described. It's like, no, I see it this way. Nope, I see it this way. You have that conversation. You're welcome. You're expected. You know that you can have a different perspective, and it's a good thing. And then sort of hash that out and move forward. It reminds me of one other quick thing. One of Amazon's leadership principles is have a backbone, disagree, and commit. And I love that because it is also very focused around having good, healthy conflict to make the best decision. And even if you disagree, once that decision has been made, everyone is going to commit to that direction, that decision, and get it done. And it sounds like you're sort of operationalizing those elements as well.
I'm half glass full. He's totally half glass empty, right? So like,
Optimism and pessimism.
yeah, like, and it's like, so I'll come in with like this, and sometimes, the pragmatic side of somebody has to take you down to, off the clouds and be like, listen, I know you think we're going to sell all this, but what's the realistic thing? And then it actually motivates you to do more. Like we had a meeting last week about it, where we're at with things, and we're, looking at hitting our numbers and stuff. Like we got to do a little more. Okay. It's like, no, Joe, where are we really at? And like, as a sales guy, you're always like, yeah, we're going to, and we're doing really well, but we want to do better. And it's like, and actually be like, all right, let's bring it down into reality here. And then it's like, oh, that actually motivates me to do more. So by being like, we got to get this, we got to get that. Like it's actually motivated me this week to be like, I'm going more. Like I worked all weekend on like other stuff and strategies and things like that. So having people that hold you accountable for things as well is also good, so
Let's talk about accountability. I want to just toss this out there, maybe get a reaction if you have one. It's okay if you don't, but we assess organizations, we assess teams in particular when we're doing that kind of teamwork. And accountability is one of the things that we measure. We measure trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and then ultimately that focus on team-based results. Accountability historically is one of the lowest scoring behaviors when we do an assessment with an organization. And there are a variety of reasons for that, which we can talk about if you'd like to. But how do you approach accountability in relationships and also from a leadership perspective?
Yeah. So, I always go back to like when I had my marketing agency, because at that point I had, 40 people working for me, and, and we had clients, and we had big clients like Pfizer and all that stuff. And I remember my employees came to me and said, we need a vacation schedule.
Hmm.
I said, what do you mean? You guys have all the vacation you want. I have no vacation schedule. Like you guys could take off as much as you want. Like that was my vacation schedule as a young owner. Right. And like, well, we need to know how many weeks we have, whatever. And I said, okay, I'll put it together. So then I'm like, all right, Jeff, you've been here 4 years. You get 3 weeks.
Okay.
And then after 3 weeks, you're giving up. You're like, I'm out of vacation days, but I want to go somewhere else. I'm like, all right, to go, but I only have to. I already used my 3 weeks up. I'm like, you guys put this. on yourselves. Like, I don't know what's going on here, right? I'm like, listen, you go away as much as you want, work from home if you want. You're making that client happy and you're hitting those deadlines. That's what you're accountable for. So if Jeff is not calling me as a client saying, Joe, Cynthia didn't do her job, I didn't get this thing, I didn't get it. Like, if I don't have clients calling me, if I have clients calling me saying, Joe, I just want to say what a great job your person's doing. We
Yeah.
love the creative, we love the thing. That's how you guys are being accountable. Make the clients happy. If they're happy, I don't care if you work from Costa Rica all week. I don't care if you don't show up on Fridays. Like, just get your job done, right? And you got to give those people their own accountability. Like, you're in charge of your own thing, right? And I remember one kid, he was younger, I had working for me. I was a very loose boss. Obviously, you can tell that by now. Like, my policies were like, hey, just get it done. But he kept coming late to work.
Mm.
He was good at his job, great designer, got stuff done. He had some stuff he wasn't, he wasn't getting it done, right? So we have a brochure. It'd be 10 changes from the client. He would do 8 of them.
Oh.
So I'd be like, listen, put a list together. Here's a highlighter. Make that change. And it was like, Jeff's name is spelled wrong. It's with a G, not a J, right? Like, little things. And like, you shouldn't get that wrong. But you could fix that. And here's the ways we're going to fix that. This is the way to do it. This is what other designers do. Put the list and highlight and cross out each one you do, so you just don't forget.
Yeah.
So we figured out. I said, the other thing is you're coming to work late, and that's your fault. You got to start coming to work on time. Well, I hit traffic. I go, yeah, there's a lot of reasons you could get to work late. That means you probably have to get here earlier because you come in late twice a week. You need to fix that, or you're gonna or I'm going to have to lay you off. And I wound up laying him off. And I hardly ever laid anyone. But I'm like, you are an adult now. Like, if you're that close, if you're that far away that a little piece of traffic or something can stop you from getting to work on time, then you got to leave a half an hour earlier every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he didn't. And that wasn't, and so after a while, I said, listen, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be in it. So
there are a couple of things you said there, Joe, that resonated with me. The first one is setting the standard. And I just got to tell you, I love the standard that you set, whether you realized you were doing it or not, which is the customer experience and them having a great experience with us is the standard. Now, there's 1,000 different ways to make that happen. And I'm not as concerned with which path you take to get there, but you must get to that place where the customer is happy, satisfied, and having a great experience with us. And so I think often accountability begins with setting that expectation. If we were doing a behavioral model on this, downstream or maybe upstream of accountability is commitment. So you would say, gosh, we want our customers to have a great experience. Are you going to commit to giving them that? And then once that commitment is given, then we move into that accountability phase. The second thing that struck me from what you were saying is accountability sometimes has to have consequences. And while it was unfortunate that he ended up getting laid off from the opportunity, the expectation was clear. He had to be there on time. And he wasn't able to manage that. And so there was a consequence there. And I think, again, sometimes that's a missing piece when you're going for commitment, laying all of that picture out for an individual.
Right. And look, he's, in the design industry I was in, we were all about, design aesthetics, what it looked like, and making ad campaigns look great. And look, there's some people that are always going to be better than others. Some artists that are better. There's some musicians that are better, right? I can't draw a stick figure. My wife and daughter could draw a Picasso, right? And this kid wasn't going to get better in that sense. He was good enough for what we needed. And we put him on the projects that were up to his caliber. So I don't think he was going to ever get to the level of a Kevin or Cynthia, or these type of people that were just out of this world creative, but you could get to work on time. Like that you can control.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't control it. And I'm telling you, and again, I fired 3 people in my lifetime, maybe. Like, I just, I hired really well. Right. We really did a good job of hiring well. I'm like, I don't want to let you go, but you gotta get here on time. You can control that. And he did it. And it just, at some point you gotta learn that lesson. And I like to, so
I often think of, in fact, Patrick Lencioni, the guy who wrote the 5 Dysfunctions book, which is a brilliant book, talks about accountability as a gift. and that we don't do it enough. We need to do it more because it is such an important gift to help people improve their game. In that same vein, in that same concept, this idea of, terminating someone's employment for not controlling the variables that they would have clear and easy control over is also a gift, because oftentimes that's a wake-up call for, especially for younger folks, to go, wait a minute, my actions and my decisions can have consequences. I need to be more disciplined, more buttoned up, more, whatever it is, to make sure that they're successful in that role. And so even though, getting laid off is probably a really distasteful experience for them, it's also probably the catalyst for them to improve. So I love that outcome.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about team-based results. And again, from a leadership standpoint, one of my criticisms of corporate America, and it's not a strong criticism, it's because I don't know that there's an easy answer for this. But we often set up goals for individuals who are on teams, but the goals that are set up, that they're measured against and then compensated against as well, are often very individualistic. But we've got team-based work to do. So what are your thoughts on that from a leadership standpoint about how to balance the individual role and managing performance around an individual, but also tying them into team-based work?
Well, I think with the team, you have a goal to set, right? This is what needs to be achieved by this time period and with this quality of work and blah, blah, blah. And everyone's got like with our dev team, right? Like it's, you guys are developing the software, right? You guys are in charge of this, but there's the people that are actually developing the software, right? And making sure that when you click this button, it goes to that page, right?
Yeah,
So that's how
right.
you measure them. So, but the overall project is like, so we have this deadline of here, right? So the dev guy, the person actually coding, is making sure that button works. So there's
Mm.
the overall, accomplishment of what we want. And then there's people that manage a project and do this. So
Mhm. Yep.
one of the things we had trouble with was somebody not managing, like, the stuff getting out of scope, right? So
Ah,
it's your job is to tell us, the client, no, right?
right.
Um, and they weren't. So we fixed that, but it was like, hey, I know you want to say yes all the time, Jeff, but you have to start saying no. So
Yeah.
there's this one person that could that lets the whole team down, because now there's more work for the developer. They're missing their timeline because there's all this stuff added to what needs to be done. Wait, we were supposed to do all this by May 1st. Now we got to do all this
Mhm.
by May 1st. I can't
Mhm.
get that done and have the quality, so it affects everything else. So one little spoke on that wheel just kind of can take the whole wheel off course and make it not work, right? So you have everyone that team is to, here's what your accomplishment is, but if one person isn't pulling their weight on that, then you have to call them out. And we did, and we figured out what's the bottleneck of why we aren't getting to where we are. Oh, this is what we see the problem is. So sometimes you
Mhm.
have to go in, and I don't think I was paying attention as much to it. And I said, wait, what's going on here? Why isn't this going? Oh, well, this, and we're pushing to get more done. They're saying it. So it was like, okay, well, both sides then, we're also saying, do a little more, do a little more. And I had clients like that all the time, and
Right.
we build a website. They're like, oh, can you add e-commerce to that site? Like, yeah, we could do that. We want to make you happy. And it's 30 more hours. And they're like, why isn't it getting done? So you
So
have to
so
have,
how so how do you balance that? How from a leadership standpoint, how do you balance that, you know, scope creep, client demand, increase in client demand, um, the team approach, and then, down to the individual who's trying to, make sure that they're getting reviewed, at the right levels during their review cycle?
yeah. So each team, you got to see where the bottleneck is, if there's an issue there, right? So
Okay.
like even when we had, again, I always did the marketing agency because we had teams working on a client, right? You guys are in charge of Pfizer. Well, what's the problem? Well, Bridget, keeps getting delayed on when the designs are done, and it's not getting done. Well, I have a lot of other work to do. All right, well, your job is to then tell the person above you that I don't have time to get this done by Friday, or whatever. So
Mhm.
so it's, for me, it was always figuring out, what's making, it's not, it might not be that person's fault. Maybe we overloaded them with work, or maybe, again, they were allowing the client to take advantage, or whatever it is. So you gotta always figure out where that bottleneck is happening, and then
Mhm.
fix it, right? And and
Mhm.
then sometimes it's just, it could be someone like the younger kid I talked to about earlier, that just doesn't know, doesn't want to say anything because the client keeps telling him to do more stuff, and he's like, I work for that client. No, you work for us. We're in
Oh.
charge of taking we're in charge of making sure the client's happy. But if they're the one pushing you and then you're not getting it done, then they're going to be mad at us for not getting done. But it's really their
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
Their fault
Yeah.
that it's not getting done because they won't see that. Oh,
Right.
that's I only ask them to do this. Like when we had the agency, people are like, well, how hard could it be to move stuff around? Well, you do it then.
If it's that easy, you do it.
Hard. Yeah, because if you move something on page 12 and you got 48-page brochure, it could move the entire thing. And so that could take 4 hours. Even though you want to just add something here, that could move the entire thing around. So yes, it does. And they didn't understand that. And so yeah, you got to find the bottleneck, see where the problem is, and just fix it, right? In the team. Hey, and usually you go to the person that's in charge of the team, right? And in our case, Kevin was in charge of all the creative people. So Kevin, what's going on with this project? What's going on with this account?
Right.
Why am I getting calls from the client? That's when I would step in, right?
Okay.
Client would call them. So when we figure out what's going on, how do we fix it?
Let's switch gears here, Joe. And I've enjoyed the conversation up to this point. I want to ask you some questions that we ask all of our guests. And we love to hear the differences in the answers. The first one is, and please feel free to have some fun with this if you can. What was the best piece of leadership advice you've been given that you didn't take?
Well, that I didn't take. That's a good one. So I think probably the best one I didn't take was my accountant had told me like to focus on your books and your bottom line and what's going on there, right? He was an accountant for a long time, and I was just a young kid that was selling. I started this agency, and it was a $3 million agency,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm just keep growing, and we were growing, and
Yeah.
it was great. And I'm like, I got this. Don't you worry about it. I'll just
Yeah.
sell more. I'll just sell more, right? And Henry kept saying, and this is a guy that's just counting for 40 years. Hey, you better watch yourself. And I think and this is when the economy took a tank in 2008, 9. It was up. It was getting to that point. It was early 2008, but I think he kind of saw. And I was a 26-year-old cocky kid, I think. And it was like, I'll just sell more. I got. And we sure took a hit when when the economy took a tank because we went from $50,000 a month in sales to like 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 overnight. I had a $20,000 a week payroll, right? And he kept telling me, and I just blew him off. Like, that's no big deal. We've been selling this whole time, like, and sales couldn't get us out of it because we couldn't sell it. Point because everybody cut their marketing budgets. What's the first thing? Marketing. And I was a marketing agency. And so he was warning me, right? And I just didn't heed his warning. And I just, I kept the company going, but barely, 2009 was not a good year, and that's actually the year we started the magazine. So, which is another story. But yeah, I should have listened to him a little bit more, and I should have started cutting people and watching my bottom line a lot more then. And that's but that was my lesson in the bottom line.
Yeah.
Make sure that's you're running lean and you're making money and you're putting it away and all that stuff. So, although I didn't listen to him, I learned a chicken ass lesson to be like, all right, so any company I started after that was like lean, like, so.
Yeah. It's funny. I think, one of the things in my business that we often say is people are the most coachable when they're losing, or when they've lost something. And I think that some of the biggest, most important lessons in life come from, those experiences where, gosh, somebody gave me some advice and I didn't take it. Good.
Yeah. And I was talking today about,
go ahead.
I was talking today with an old friend of mine. We had lunch. She owned a PR company, and I told her about the book I wrote. And I won't curse on the show, but it's how to F up your business without really trying. So it was, the old play movie. So I wrote a whole book about all these stupid things that I did like that for other aspiring entrepreneurs or whatever to read. Hey, these are things you shouldn't do, Jeff. There's tons of books on what you should do. Here's one. Here's some stupid things I did that you shouldn't do.
Yeah. Yeah, we probably, anybody who's been an entrepreneur could probably write at least a chapter in a book like that for sure.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so speaking of that, what advice would you give if, when you think back on the arc of your career, the things that you've done, the businesses that you've started, the successes that you've had? Is there a theme or a thing that you would want, younger folks coming into the business world, or somebody who's converting out of a corporate based role into more of an entrepreneurial based role? What would be the one thing you'd want them to know?
Well, I think there's two things I wish I had done or whatever somebody told me to do. So one was on based off the story I just told about the accountant. Like I had brought in an investor in to my company, and he was a good finance guy, and like I realized I should have had him 3 years earlier, right? So like
Uh-huh.
if you're starting a company, like you might be great at websites or IT or accounting or whatever, but you don't know how to run a business, and you
Yeah.
know what you know. You're very creative or whatever, but bring the people in that on the things that you don't know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like even building Nolodex, right? I don't know how to build software. I'm not a software guy. But
Yep.
Adrian is, and when we built that software, I said to the dev team from day one, they brought me on. Okay, we're gonna start. We hired a dev team. Joe, you're on here. I'm like, why am I on this call? Well, you're the owner of
Mm.
the company, one of the owners. I said, what do you need me for? I said, is it gonna do XYZ when you're done? They're like, yeah. I'm like, then call me when you're done. Like I'm just gonna get in the way. I don't know anything about that. I don't know how to develop. I just know if I click this button, will it make that payment? Yes. Okay, then
Right.
build, right? So get the people on your team and get people in that know. So finance is my worst thing, right? I'm good at bringing money in. Don't let me touch
Mhm.
it, right? My house here at home, my wife, like money is somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know what the account number is. I know it's a J somewhere, but don't let me touch it. So the first thing we did at Nolodex was bring on a CFO.
Oh, I see. Smart.
Right. And, and
Yeah.
and Adrian is not as good at numbers either, right? So he's much better than me, but still, we're like, we need someone like so. I knew that was something in it. So bring the right people in to do the right jobs that they should be doing to help you grow your
Okay.
company. You're
That
not
sounds
good
like
at
really good advice.
sales. You're not going to become good at sales overnight. We have people in our group that, oh, I'm an accountant. Like, all right, now you got to go sell. You're the owner of a company, and you're also the head of sales. You're not going to be able to just start selling. Like you can bring a salesperson, and it's hard because how are you going to pay a salesperson? You got to figure that out. So,
Right.
um, and the other thing I would have told my younger self is to read books. I never read.
Uh,
Like I wasn't a reader up until I was like 40 years old, and my 40th birthday, my friends bought me a Motley Crue book, which was awesome, and I couldn't put it down. As I never read books. I don't know why. I just wasn't that, and I read that in like 3 days. That was awesome. But then I started reading business books, and
yeah.
and and stupid cocky me was also like, I'm writing my own book. I don't need Jeff to tell me what to do,
Yeah.
right? But I've been reading books for the last 10 years, and even the last like, all summer, like holy crap, like I should have read this book 10 years ago, right? So pick up a couple books and ask people in your field or entrepreneurs like what books did they read, because just read, and you don't even have to read the whole book. Like you get those first 3 chapters, like shit, what a great concept.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
awesome concept for business, right? Crossing the chasm, right? How did iPhones get to where they are, right? It's this book,
Yeah. Yeah.
chasm. Like you got to get over that little chasm. You get those first early adopters, then you got to get over that little chasm and then take off. So that's what like growing our community, growing Nolodex. Like we got to get those first couple people. Who are the people we want to adopt this thing that are going to go tell the rest of the world,
Hmm.
right? And so that's just I read the first couple chapters. I don't think I finished that book. I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think reading some great books out there.
Well,
So
that sounds like really good advice. Two pieces of good advice. I think along that first one about hiring the right people, I've always heard, if you really want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you've got to have a good lawyer. You've got to have a good accountant. You probably ought to have a good coach to help
hmm
you see what you're not seeing. And
yeah,
that combination is going to sort of amplify and mitigate risk, but amplify your natural talents as an entrepreneur. That sounds like really good advice.
yeah,
Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
me too.
I love your energy and your passion. And I really hope people enjoy the content of our conversation today. And I just, as we wrap up, I want to wish you tremendous success with Nolodex and the Connective, and we'll make sure that people have access to that information as we sign off.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. This is
All
great.
right. Thanks so much. Take care.
All right. See you.